will have to work with this committee, executive committee of Gaza, because I don't see the technocrats government begin working in Gaza before the establishing of the ISF, and there will be no establishment of the ISF until Hamas will be disarmed. Because beside Turkey, that is willing to join now to the ISF in order to have boots on the ground of the Gaza Strip because of their interests, not because of the Gazans. Okay, there is no even a single country that is willing to send its troops to join the ISF and to begin working in the Gaza Strip, because they know that as long as Hamas continues existing as an organized and effective military entity in the Gaza Strip, even much weaker than it used to be until October 7th, okay? They will not come because they do not intend to fight Hamas. They do not intend to disarm Hamas. And therefore, I think that there will be no ISF. If there will be no ISF until Hamas will be disarmed, then the technocrats government will not be able to begin working, maybe in a very symbolic scale in the southeastern part of the green area, which is controlled by the IDF near Rafah there. But it will be very, very symbolic. This will not be a game changer, okay? In order to have the game changer, we have to dismantle Hamas. We have to disarm Hamas. As long as there is no ISF which is willing and capable to do that, nobody else will do that but the IDF, and we need more time, and it will be much easier for the IDF to do that if there will be significant changes in Iran. So everything is related to everything, and I think that there are very clear priorities in the eyes of Prime Minister Netanyahu, priorities that do not exist for marginal politicians like Smotrich and Ben Gvir that
Right.
have to say what they say for their base and for political reasons. These are not strategic reasons, and these are not strategic observations on the situation, on the reality on the ground.
Devo, we have to make
Absolutely.
one more, just one additional sentence on what Professor Michael said.
Dr. Diker,
I
we
know,
really
real
are
quick.
almost out of time.
Qatar and Turkey. President Trump knows that Qatar and Turkey are not going to put boots on the ground. And therefore, he had to give them something to keep them in from the first days where they were part of this international force that ended up bringing all the Israeli live hostages back. President Trump knows they're not going to go into Gaza. That's a red line for Israel, but he had to throw them a bone of some sort. And that is kind of what has happened here. That's why you've heard a relatively moderate response by Prime Minister Netanyahu. They only represent 15% of the executive committee. They're not going to determine what the IDF can do or can't do. And so it's an imperfect reality that Israel is operating under. Again, keeping an eye on the ball in Tehran. That's the whole point. Regime change.
And there are a lot of movements behind the scenes that we are not seeing, but we're just going to have to follow these developments as closely as we can. I want to thank you both so much for coming on the show today, Professor Kobi Michael and Dr. Dan Diker. Thank you both.
Thank you, Devo.
Thank you for having us. Bye-bye.
And a heartbreaking follow-up to the tragedy that struck Jerusalem yesterday, where 2 infants were pronounced dead in an unsupervised and unlicensed daycare in the heart of the capital city. The country came under shock when medics pronounced 3.5-month-old Lia Tzipora and 4-month-old Aharon dead after being found unresponsive at an illegal daycare where 53 other infants were also reportedly harmed. External investigations by the Institute for Forensic Medicine found no clear cause of death, although medical experts believe the infants succumbed to dehydration after being held in a closed room with a fan heater set very high. As an investigation into the event begins, mass crowds of ultra-Orthodox took to the streets to protest the investigation and required autopsy to determine the cause of death. Rioters in 3 major ultra-Orthodox cities blocked roads, clashed with police, and demanded the government respect their beliefs, under which autopsies violate religious law. 3 daycare caregivers have been detained for investigation. The daycare manager's attorney says she is fully cooperating and had no knowledge of the tragedy as it occurred. And we now get to speak to one of the volunteers who was first to arrive at the scene of this tragedy, United Hatzalah EMT volunteer Daniel Katzenstein. Daniel, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Simcha, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Can you explain a little bit about, the initial developments of this tragedy? The emergency call, if I'm not mistaken, was initially sent as a hazardous material event, something we don't really get that often here in Israel. Talk to me about that. How did you approach the scene, and when did you realize that this was not just a normal call, but one that would bring immense backlash and debate?
Okay, so the call actually came into United Solar headquarters with a really almost like a cryptic child endangerment, and then there was a hang up. There was a lot of mayhem. The call went out on our system as a chashash chayadam, a life endangerment suspected. So we really didn't know what we were getting involved in. The first volunteers who got there came across a situation that it was a CPR, began resuscitation efforts, called for backup because that's what one would do under those circumstances. Uh, as soon as the first child was handed off for transport, a call came in for a second infant in need of resuscitation efforts, and then that once you have two people in the same location requiring resuscitation, you must consider environmental causes for the joint emergency. And the most logical is some form of noxious gas or poisoning, something that puts all the other responders at risk and all the other children on scene at risk. So that's how it initially developed. It did not come in as no one recognized, no one considered it a hazardous material incident until there were two people, two of the babies were noticed to be unconscious, and then in the end, there was no findings of hazardous materials there either. So there's a certain amount of unknowns. I'm aware of what they're currently talking about as dehydration, which is, that's what the findings say. Then that's what the findings say. But that's not our world as if in United Hatzalah as emergency first response. We treat the patient.
So what is your assessment, considering, the vitals that have been taken and the response that was given on the scene? What's your assessment of the cause of their unfortunate death?
Clearly well beyond the scope of what an emergency first responder would do. Our job is to stabilize, treat, and transport. We found I was among the first wave of volunteers responding, as I am also a psychotrauma crisis response professional. My focus was more on helping evacuate the children and connect them with the parents. That was a lot of the parents were suffering some significant stress, and that is where I was redirected and stayed for hours on scene until all the parents were connected. But we found from my colleagues who were there very little on scene that was questionable. There were three separate daycares that I'm aware of in that building. So the amount of children that came out was from at least three, if not four, separate facilities, which is not a unusual amount. I am aware that some of the photos circulating were after the children were taken out of this area where CPR was in progress and were put in available areas. The bathroom picture is not an accurate depiction from what our medics have reported, meaning the children were in the main room, were then moved away so CPR can progress, and then once there was a concern for a hazmat, then everyone was evacuated. But that's just another
Absolutely.
Sort of the mayhem,
Right.
that
I
we're
can
dealing
imagine
with.
that it's no easy task to control the mayhem. It's also very crucial for me to note that the psychotrauma unit is doing incredible work, as this is also an incredibly relevant topic. But we are unfortunately out of time for today. But Daniel Katzenstein, I want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing your insights.
Thank you.
And with that, I unfortunately have to wrap. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Good Week Israel, the show where we recap for you some of the positive highlights that have been coming out of Israel from this week. I'm your host, Ivo Klein, and coming up on today's show, United Hatzalah boost readiness in a massive simulation drill. Check out the IDF's Alpinist unit and how they guard Israel's Hermon. And this new Aliyah initiative is set to bring waves of immigrants to Israel. United Hatzalah, a medical organization dedicated to saving lives in Israel, hold regular drills and simulations to prepare for any case scenario. Think mass casualty incidents, special natural events, and many, many more. Well, with the region on alert right now with the unrest in Iran, United Hatzalah medics gathered to simulate one of the deadliest attacks to hit Israel, the Islamic regime's missile threat. Let's check out how the simulation went and what went on. On Tuesday night, United Hatzalah volunteers gathered in Kochav Yaakov to conduct a massive ballistic missile drill as a potential war with the Islamic regime in Iran continues to grow. In addition, United Hatzalah announced earlier its readiness to respond to any situation that might arise from an Iranian attack.
Based on the request of the Ministry of Health of Israel, United Hatzalah are also fully prepared to deal with the situation in Iran.
This simulation aims to gear volunteers with necessary tools to face a missile attack from the Islamic Republic. An attack of this proportion had already claimed the lives of 31 Israelis during Operation Rising Lion in June 2025, prompting the Angels in Orange to collaborate with the IDF, Israel Police, and Israel Fire and Rescue Services on a coordinated response simulation drill. Drones and other tactical equipment were utilized, but also a crucial role in Tuesday's drill was the United Hatzalah Psychotrauma Unit, who last deployed to Sydney following the Hanukkah massacre in Bondi Beach, and was on hand to respond to the mentally and emotionally distressed, helping to prevent long-term emotional damage and even trauma. The drill also involved a scenario of a coordinated terrorist infiltration, making sure that all bases were covered. By the conclusion of the drill, the simulated casualties had been treated and evacuated, the infiltration scenarios have been resolved, and command centers had helped detailed operational debriefings. The community quickly returned to routine, but the lessons drawn from the exercise remain immediate and sobering. In Israel, where the civilian front is inseparable from the battlefield, preparation is not theoretical, it's the difference between chaos and control when the unthinkable happens.
United Hatzalah are fully prepared. Our command center, our 1221 dispatch center, and all our volunteers all across Israel are ready to deal with this situation.
And with the mass protests and deadly crackdown by RGC police in Iran, communities from around the globe protested to support the people of Iran.
And as the regime intensifies its crackdown on protesters in Iran, Iranians around the world are taking to the streets, demanding change and urging the international community to act. From London to Paris, Washington to Germany, demonstrations are growing louder by the day. Here's a look at how the Iranian diaspora is making its voice heard. India Naftali reports.
Yes, Lidar, we are seeing protesters gathered outside the Iranian embassy in London, voicing support for demonstrators back home as Iran enters another week of deadly unrest. Chanting anti-government slogans and waving flags, members of the Iranian diaspora called on the international community to act, saying communications with their families inside Iran have been cut and the situation on the ground is rapidly deteriorating.
Iranian people are hostage by a terrorist government for over 75 hours now, and we are disconnected from our loved families and from our sisters and brothers inside Iran, which we know that at the moment they are getting massacred and killed by these terrorists, by machine guns. And we want the world to hear our voice and help us.
Similar scenes are playing out in other parts of the world. In Paris, hundreds marched near the Eiffel Tower, holding signs reading "Free Iran" and burning images of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei.
Donc on est face à un régime barbare et sauvage qui veut massacrer sa population à huis clos.
In Washington, protesters rallied in front of the White House, calling for international support and chanting against Iran's leadership.
Hundreds of Iranian Americans have come from all over the United States right here in front of the White House to tell the world that the people of Iran want change. Now is the time to stand on the side of the people of Iran for their freedom.
And in Germany, members of the Iranian diaspora held their own demonstrations, saying they hoped international pressure could help bring the end to the current regime. As demonstrations continue into their third week, Tehran has threatened retaliation against U.S. military bases and Israel if foreign powers intervene. President Donald Trump has repeatedly warned that the United States could take action if the regime continues to use deadly force against civilians. For Iranians abroad, from London to Paris, Washington to Germany, the message remains urgent, a call for the world to not look away as protesters at home face a crackdown with no end in sight.
Thank you, India, for the report. And what's also interesting to note is the lack of protests from the Free Palestine protesters, those who for the past 2 years have claimed they care so deeply about human rights. And yet now, when innocent civilians are being killed in the streets, they remain silent. It seems they only protest against Israel. Any other country where real human rights atrocities occur? Crickets.
The IDF has an array of special units, but did you know we have troops stationed on the snowy Mount Hermon area, protecting Israel's only operating ski slopes? Well, we actually just got brand new photos and videos from the Alpinist unit activities, and you absolutely have to see it. Take a look.
And the Israel Defense Forces Elite Alpinist Unit has completed a rare and highly specialized training cycle on Mount Hermon, preparing for combat and defense in some of the harshest conditions in the region. The Reservist Special Forces Unit, which specializes in operations in snow, ice, and extreme cold, trained this year at the summit of Mount Hermon, an area that was in Syrian hands until the fall of the Assad regime in December 2024. During the exercises, troops practiced operating in steep, complex mountainous terrain using specialized equipment designed for extreme weather and heavy snow. The IDF says the training is critical for maintaining operational readiness in the northern arena, where weather can be as much of a challenge as any adversary. In recent days, the unit took part in a mission on Mount Hermon and in the Golan Heights aimed at protecting the area and enabling the safe reopening of Israel's only ski site to visitors. Mount Hermon is the only place in Israel with guaranteed winter snow. The ski resort, located on the southeastern slopes of the mountain, had been closed for more than a year during the war with Hezbollah after damage to ski lifts from the rocket fire. The site has since reopened with limited access, including a cable car and sledding areas with security provided by IDF forces on the ground. And meanwhile, Israel is bracing for a powerful winter storm set to hit tonight, bringing fierce winds, heavy rain, flooding risks, and the first widespread snow threat of the season. In the north, heavy snow is expected on Mount Hermon, with several centimeters of accumulation possible in the northern Golan Heights. The Israel Meteorological Service warns of strong winds with gusts topping 100 kilometers per hour, similar to the storm just days ago that caused widespread damage.
Well, Israel and Germany are boosting relations, expanding way beyond military cooperation, and actually etching toward cybersecurity and innovative tech. Have a look.
Israel and Germany have signed a historic security partnership, marking a major step in joint defense against shared threats, with Israel's leadership in defense, cybersecurity, and advanced technology now formally recognized on the global stage. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu linked Iran's growing threat to regional and international stability to the new Defense and Cybersecurity Pact signed in Jerusalem with German Interior Minister Alexander Dobrindt. Netanyahu said Iran and its proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, pose a direct danger not only to Israel, but to the entire region and beyond. The agreement establishes deep cooperation in cybersecurity, counterterrorism, and advanced technologies, and signals a clear commitment to joint security action. Minister Dobrindt called the pact a new strategic level of partnership rooted in Germany's historic responsibility and its commitment to Israel's security. Netanyahu highlighted existing defense cooperation, including the delivery of Israel's Arrow 3 missile defense system to Germany last December, capable of intercepting long-range ballistic missiles. The prime minister said the agreement underscores Israel's strengthening ties with major powers, adding that Israel is, quote, on an upward trend in security and international cooperation, despite pressure from parts of Europe.
I attach enormous importance to the cooperation, overall cooperation between Israel and Germany, and especially Israel and Germany on this question of cybersecurity, which is one of the main threats to our internal security and in many ways also our infrastructure and other threats.
And it's not just Germany Israel is boosting allyship with. Japan's foreign ministry delegation was just in Israel last week. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar reaffirmed their commitment to Israel from October 7th until now. Have a look. The visit of Japan's foreign minister, his first bilateral trip since taking office in October, is already being seen as a clear signal of the strong friendship and shared values between Israel and Japan. Sa'ar called the two nations ancient civilizations with common interests and democratic principles, and stressed that Israel and Japan must deepen strategic and security cooperation, particularly in a changing global landscape. Sa'ar thanked Japan for its support since the October 7th massacre.
We thank Japan, which since October 7th has recognized Israel's right to defend itself, has called for the unconditional release of our hostages, and has imposed sanctions on Hamas leaders. We will work together to strengthen bilateral relations across all fields between our countries and nations.
Motegi, serving his second term as foreign minister, visited following a series of high-level exchanges, including Prime Minister Netanyahu's meeting with a large Japanese delegation of lawmakers, underscoring Japan's growing role as a key diplomatic and security partner for Israel. Israeli officials say that this visit not only deepens strategic ties, but also sends a strong signal that Jerusalem is looking to broaden its alliances beyond the region, strengthening diplomatic, security, and economic cooperation with Asia.
First of all, let me once again express my deepest condolences to the victims of the terrorist attacks on October 7th. And earlier today, before coming here, I visited the music festival site memorial in the city of Rain, one of the attack sites, and with deep sorrow, I renewed my strong conviction that terrorism is absolutely unacceptable under any circumstances. And Japan has strongly condemned the brutal acts of terror committed by Hamas, and we maintain that Hamas must be disarmed in accordance with the comprehensive plan. To improve the situation surrounding Israel and Palestine, Japan has maintained good relations with both Israel and Palestine, and building upon such relationship of trust, with this visit, I aim to convey Japan's candid views on concrete steps to be taken to both sides, and also explain how Japan intends to extend its cooperation with you all.
How exciting when a new batch of immigrants finds its way home to Israel. Well, the Ministry of Aliyah and Integration are expanding their initiatives to encourage more Aliyah to the Holy Land. Have a look. Against the backdrop of a sharp and alarming rise in anti-Semitism across the West, Israel has greenlit a wide-ranging national plan to encourage large-scale Aliyah from countries including France, Britain, Canada, and Australia. The news comes as official data shows anti-Semitic incidents skyrocketing, up more than 500% in Canada, 450% in Britain, 350% in France, and nearly 400% in Australia over the past 3 years. At the same time, applications for Aliyah have surged, but officials say too many potential immigrants are still getting stuck in bureaucracy or struggling with housing, employment, and absorption concerns. The new program seeks to remove those barriers. It includes fast-tracked visa approvals within 30 days and a full digital system for document transfers. Financially, the plan offers monthly absorption grants for the first year, up to 3,400 shekels for large families, or about $1,000 without a rental requirement. Additional housing assistance will follow, including enhanced rent support for those settling in the north, the south, and Judea and Samaria.
The program also expands Hebrew studies, educational support for children, academic and professional guidance, and incentives for employers to hire new immigrants. Local authorities will receive extra funding if they agree to absorb larger numbers of newcomers. The overall budget is expected to reach hundreds of millions of shekels through 2029, with implementation led by Aliyah and Integration Minister Ophir Sofer and the Interministerial Task Force. Officials say the goal is clear: to turn today's fear and pressure on Jewish communities abroad into a historic opportunity to strengthen Israel demographically, both economically and socially, at a time of national and global challenge.
And if there's one program you absolutely must know by JNF USA, it's the Faculty Fellowship Program, where educators get the chance to come to Israel, tour the country, and learn valuable lessons that they can later take back with them to campus. Let's hear what 2 university professors had to say about their trip.
Well, Jewish National Fund USA's Faculty Fellowship Program in Israel recently wrapped up. The program bringing non-Jewish American college and university professors to Israel for an immersive, eye-opening experience. Today, we're speaking with 2 distinguished participants, Paul Yankee and Kathy Elias, to share how this trip helped shape their perspectives and strengthen their narratives. Paul and Kathy, thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Now, how have your preconceived notions of Israel been challenged? Paul, let's start with you.
Thank you. I have been very excited about being in Israel and experiencing Israel. I came very curious. And the preconceived elements that I might have had was that there was very much a living under pressure. But what I also saw was a stronger resilience and a stronger resolve than I had expected. And with that, great insight, great ability, and also a very caring heart in many different ways. So I didn't come with necessarily super strong preconceptions one way or the other. I had a great respect already for Israel, coming from my days working in technology and the intelligence that they bring into that space. And so I was really wanting to understand more how this all works, how these countries that are having such disparate views on things able to coincide together.
And Kathy, can you share from your perspective your experience as well?
Well, I want to point out that I'm coming this time on the Faculty Fellowship as an ambassador. So I've been here before, and so this is the second time around. And so I'm looking at very different things. The first time around, a lot of what Paul said, looking at all the innovation, looking at all the really wonderful things that have gone on in terms of research and all in Israel. But this time I've come and I've tried to focus more on the people. And coming from a university that had a lot of problems and a lot of negative actions on campus, I tried to talk to a lot of students also when I was here. And one of the things, I want to bring back that I think is extremely important to our students is just how much many of the students here, of course, are very similar in what they like about government, what they don't like about government, their criticisms, but also their desire to live the same kind of good life and their willingness to really want to engage with students in the United States and be heard.
Paul, what will you be taking back with you to campus from what you've learned or experienced here on the program?
I'll first off say we've had a very full 12 days of visiting a lot of different universities, a lot of different organizations, businesses, museums. And I will tell you, my mind is still very much processing. I'm looking forward to bringing all this together, letting it gel. But one thing that I have seen is I think there's a great need in my university setting and in my element of the areas of influence I have to consider more the consequences of things. And that's something that I've definitely seen be very paramount in Israel is consequences are real and deep for everything that comes up. And I think there can be this context of not considering always the consequences, how it plays out to all the related constituents to different elements that come up. So that's one piece that I want to bring out. I also want to bring more of a perspective of what's really happening, what's really going on. I think when you're able to experience different cultures, different areas, the best way, without any question, to do it is to actually be there. And JNF affords that possibility for people, particularly for academics in this situation.
All right, Kathy, Elias, and Paul Yankee, thank you so much, both of you, for joining us today and sharing with us your insights and experiences.
Thank you very much for having us.
Now let's hear once again from the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews to hear all of the latest fellowship news that is sure to put a smile on your face.
Shalom from here in Israel, and here are 2 fellowship projects that you should know about this week. Number 1, meet Galina, an incredible Jewish woman who's 96 years old and still lives in the same small village in Ukraine that she was born and raised in. This month, the fellowship went and delivered to Galina not only a food box, but we delivered her warm clothing, blankets, medicine, everything she needs to survive the winter. Suddenly, she sits alone in her home in Ukraine, but she feels the warmth and glory of God, that everyone is connected and that we are there to care for her. Number 2, the fellowship staff recently went to Leket, which saves produce from the fields of Israel and distributes it to the poor. The fellowship partners with Leket to provide soups to the elderly during the winter that we make from these rescued vegetables, and we even provided them with a new truck. This week we went to Kiryat Shmona, which is on Israel's northernmost border. As we pulled up, the elderly, the families came, people took food to bring back to their homebound neighbors. That not only is the fellowship feeding the hungry, but we are enabling others in these most far off, poor, war-torn cities to create community and to support each other. Well, there you have it, 2 projects out of so many of the fellowship that you are part of. Join me next week to learn more about the work of the fellowship on the ground. Shalom.
And that's all for today's Good Week Israel. I hope we've helped to deliver some positive news that you get to now take with you into this week ahead. As always, I am Devo Klein. Take care. Thank you so much for watching.
Well, over the weekend, an important summit brought together key figures from Jewish and American backgrounds to discuss geopolitics, the rise of anti-Semitism, and the fight against it. ILTV was at the Israeli-American Council National Summit in Florida. Let's go now to our correspondent, Libby Alon, who was at the event.
Yes, Emily, good evening. I am here in Florida at the IAC event, one of the largest gatherings in the United States. More than 4,000 people came from across the country to show their support for the strong connection between Israel and the United States. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, Special Envoy Yehuda Kaplu and Miriam Edelson, and many others were here to speak. ILTV had the privilege of being on the ground, listening, speaking, and interviewing some of the most influential voices in the room. This is what it looks like during the weekend.
This past weekend in Miami was a true celebration of Jewish identity and community. More than 4,000 Jews from across the United States gathered for the IAC conference, an event dedicated to strengthening the ties between Israel and the United States and reinforcing Jewish identity.
I remember when President Trump and I were talking, Steve Witkoff was in the room, and we were talking about Iran. And I said, the one comment I said, if we're ever going to take action, I want to phone a friend. And that friend is Israel, because of the capability and the friendship that we have with them, and Israel has very unique capabilities.
The conference featured prominent speakers and influencers from around the world, Special Envoy Yehuda Kaplan, philanthropist Dr. Miriam Edelson, and others, who discussed the challenges ahead and ways to strengthen the bond between Jewish communities and Israel.
Global anti-Semitism is on the rise. How we combat it is part of what was said before about having a cohesive strategy. The battle is, we're fighting it. we are not tolerating one issue of anti-Semitism. The president has made it clear, and for those of you who don't know, on Monday he said anti-Semitism has no place in America.
The conference also addressed key geopolitical issues. U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East Steve Witkoff spoke about Iran, revealing that at President Trump's direction, the U.S. contacted Iran officials to express concern over report of mass execution of anti-regime protesters.
President Trump warned the Iranians, and at his direction, we communicated with the Iranians yesterday, and one of the things we were concerned about were the killings that were rumored to be on the way. Hangings, mass hangings, and that's been shut down. I think, as everyone knows, the president has announced that. He's the only one in the world who has that indomitable strength that can bend people. I watch it happen. It's quite remarkable to watch it happen.
The people of Iran clearly want that regime gone. What would you say to them?
I'd say to them, they're incredibly courageous people, and we stand with you.
The Trump administration was strongly represented with Attorney General Pam Bondi and Deputy Attorney General Hermit Dillon, emphasizing their commitment to fighting anti-Semitism and strengthening ties with Israel.
I believe that quite a bit of what we're seeing online and in our universities and attacks on our houses of worship is funded by foreign governments and foreign evil actors, and that is definitely a focus of this administration, to trace the money and understand who's funding it, because that's critical to stopping it.
God bless you. We will continue to fight for Israel. Shabbat Shalom.
The IAC conference once again proved to be a powerful platform, strengthening Jewish identity and the enduring bond between Israel and American Jewry.
Over the weekend, the IDF was active on multiple fronts with deadly clashes with terrorists taking place in Gaza, Lebanon, and Judea and Samaria. ILTV's Devo Klein has the rundown.
Beginning with Gaza, the IDF and Shin Bet confirmed they carried out targeted airstrikes across the Gaza Strip against Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad operatives following blatant violations of the October ceasefire. Among those killed was Muhammad Khalid Muhammad al-Khalwi, a senior commander in Hamas's Al-Qassam brigades, involved in the October 7, 2023 attack and a 1995 assault on the Nahal Oz checkpoint. The IDF also confirms the death of the commander of the Islamic Jihad missile unit in central Gaza. The IDF and Shin Bet say any ceasefire violation will be met with a firm response, and that they will continue to act against threats to Israeli troops and civilians. In Judea and Samaria, the IDF arrested 5 Palestinians over the past day in connection with 2 separate Molotov cocktail incidents. Troops operating near villages in the northern Samaria identified 2 suspects who were planning to throw Molotov cocktails at a civilian road. Soldiers opened fire to remove the threat, wounding 1 and arrested both. In a separate incident near Kafr Malik, northeast of Ramallah, assailants threw an explosive device and a Molotov cocktail at a road leading to the Mount Chatzor military base. Neither devices detonated and no one was hurt. 3 suspects were arrested in the event. The IDF says troops shot and killed a Palestinian man who ran at a soldier holding a large rock during violent riots in Al-Mukhayir. The army says forces had come under attack and acted to protect themselves. Security forces say operations are continuing to prevent attacks on Israeli civilians and troops. And turning to the north, an Israeli airstrike on a vehicle in southern Lebanon has killed 1 person. The IDF says the target was a Hezbollah operative who was violating the ceasefire by working to rehabilitate the terror group's infrastructure in the area. The military says the strike breached the understandings of the U.S. brokered ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon. The incident comes days after the Lebanese army claimed it had completed its first phase of disarming Hezbollah south of the Litani River, a claim Israel says falls far short of ceasefire requirements.
Israel's only English news channel, bringing you the headlines that matter every hour, straight from the center of where it's all unfolding.
back to ILTV on the Hour. I'm Devo Klein, coming to you live from Israel, breaking down all of the biggest headlines that are coming out of the region. American forces are in motion in the region today, with tensions between the United States and Iran calming but not diminishing. And speculation remains that the U.S. could strike the Islamic regime in Iran in the coming days. The USS Abraham Lincoln has been spotted overnight entering the Malacca Strait between Malaysia and Indonesia, moving from its original post in the South China Sea just days ago. The warship is now within striking distance of Iran in the Arabian Sea. Iran's leadership may be entering its final days, as President Trump is now poised with all military options available to attack Iran if he so chooses. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz is now the first leader to predict the early fall of the Ayatollah's regime. Speaking during a visit in India, Merz said demonstrations have shifted from economic grievances to open calls for the fall of the clerical regime, questioning its legitimacy. Take a listen.
Mich besorgen im Augenblick die Nachrichten über eine immer höhere Gewaltbereitschaft der Polizei, der sogenannten Revolutionsgarden in Iran gegen die eigene Bevölkerung. Ich will die Gelegenheit nutzen, noch einmal das Mullah-Regime aufzufordern, diese Gewalt sofort einzustellen. Wenn sich ein Regime nur noch mit Gewalt an der Macht halten kann, dann ist es faktisch am Ende. Ich gehe davon aus, dass wir jetzt hier auch gerade die letzten Tage und Wochen dieses Regimes sehen.
And a signing ceremony for U.S. President Donald Trump's proposed Board of Peace is set for Thursday in Davos on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum. According to an invitation circulating online and cited by Israeli reporters, the White House is calling on chiefs of state and government to sign the Board of Peace Charter this week in Davos. President Isaac Herzog is expected to attend the forum, while Prime Minister Netanyahu will not, although he did confirm he was invited to join the body. The board's final makeup remains unclear, with some leaders committed and others expressing reservations. In Israel, reservations for Trump's Board of Peace are evident, with Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich strongly opposing Phase 2 of the Gaza plan. According to the minister, Hamas must be dealt with more aggressively in order to fully disarm the terror group, and Israel should be cooperating with hostile countries. Have a listen.
נפרק את המפקדה בקריית גת, נסלק משם מדינות כמו מצרים ובריטניה שעוינות את ישראל וחותרות תחת ביטחונה, להציב לחמאס אולטימטום קצרצר לפירוק והגליה אמיתיים ומיד עם פקיעתו, להסתער על רצועת עזה בכל הכוח, להשמיד את חמאס צבאית, אזרחית ושלטונית, לפתוח את מעבר רפיח עם או בלי הסכמה מצרית, ולאפשר לתושבי עזה לצאת ממנה ולחפש את עתידם במקום אחר, שבו הם לא יסכנו את עתיד ילדיהם.
Now, his opinion opposes Netanyahu's, who spoke in the Knesset yesterday and reiterated Trump's commitment to Israel's demands of disarming Hamas and demilitarizing the Gaza Strip. He said Israel will not accept partial measures or symbolic steps, stressing that Hamas cannot remain an armed force in the Strip under any circumstances, making clear that Israel will attempt the diplomatic route but may also use military means to achieve these goals. Netanyahu added that disarmament and demilitarization are non-negotiable conditions for moving forward. And a heartbreaking follow-up to the tragedy that struck Jerusalem yesterday, where 2 infants were pronounced dead in an unsupervised and unlicensed daycare in the heart of the capital city. The country came under shock when medics pronounced 3.5-month-old Leah Tzipora and 4-month-old Aharon Katz dead after being found unresponsive at an illegal daycare where 53 other infants were also reportedly harmed. External investigations by the Institute for Forensic Medicine found no clear cause of death, although medical experts believe the infants succumbed to dehydration after being held in a closed room with a fan heater set very high. As an investigation into the event begins, mass crowds of ultra-Orthodox took to the streets to protest the investigation and required autopsy to determine the cause of death. Rioters in 3 major cities blocked roads, clashed with police, and demanded that the government respect their beliefs, under which autopsies are not true. And that's a wrap for this edition of ILTV on the Hour. I'm Devo Klein, and I want to thank you so much for watching today.
Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Sivan Raviv, and coming up in today's newscast. Iran warns the United States a strike on their supreme leader, Khamenei, would mean an all-out war. The new Gaza Board of Peace continues to spark concern in Israel. And the IDF strikes Hezbollah and stepping up its military presence in the Middle East and in Jerusalem. The message is clear. A U.S. strike on Iran remains very much on the table. The Iranian president is warning that an attack on Khamenei would be viewed as a direct declaration of war. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz has the latest.
The aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln and its strike group are moving toward the region, expected to enter U.S. Central Command within days, escorted by 2 destroyers. At the same time, a dozen U.S. F-15 fighter jets have arrived in Jordan with additional aircraft and cargo planes heading into the theater, including to the strategic base at Diego Garcia. U.S. officials told Israeli media that all options are now on the table as Washington builds the force needed to give President Trump real military choices against Iran. Prime Minister Netanyahu convened senior members of Israel's defense echelon as officials assess that an American strike is a real and growing possibility after reports that Trump halted an attack last week due to limited U.S. capabilities and regional restrictions. The calculus is now changing. As U.S. forces flow back into the region, the military option is being restored, including Trump's reportedly preferred one-and-done scenario. That is, a dramatic strike that could even target Supreme Leader Khamenei. Iran's president is warning such a move would mean full-scale war. In a post, President Pezeshkian accused the United States and its allies of waging a long-standing campaign of hostility against Iran. Iran is also signaling a possible hardening of its response to the recent wave of mass protests, with the judiciary now openly floating the possibility of executions linked to the unrest. Speaking at a press conference, the Iranian judiciary spokesman said that a number of cases have been classified as muhareb, an Islamic legal term meaning waging war against God. That's a charge that carries the death penalty under Iranian law. The remarks mark a potential shift, coming just days after Iran's foreign minister had suggested that detained protesters would not face execution. The clerical regime has routinely blamed widespread unrest on foreign enemies, including the United States and Israel, as it moves to reassert control following weeks of deadly demonstrations. Meanwhile, all eyes are now on the U.S. military buildup. In Iran, many millions who oppose the Ayatollah's regime are wondering whether President Trump's promised help is now truly on the way.
And new appointments and reactions continue to emerge around President Donald Trump's Board of Peace for Gaza, with confirmation that Russian President Vladimir Putin and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, or his designee, have been invited. More from ILTV's Mayan Hoffman.
The Kremlin confirmed that Russian President Vladimir Putin has also been invited to join the Board of Peace, saying Moscow is studying the proposal and seeking contacts with Washington. The news comes a day after Pakistan confirmed that it had received an invitation to join the board, a move that would bring another country with no diplomatic relations with Israel into the largely symbolic body. Pakistan's foreign ministry said it would remain engaged with international efforts for peace in Gaza, framing its position around Palestinian self-determination and UN resolutions. Pakistan has repeatedly accused Israel of genocide, a charge Israel strongly rejects. Israel's political and security leadership moved quickly to respond to the makeup of the more powerful Gaza Executive Board, which will oversee post-war governance in Gaza. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu convened meetings on Sunday with the War Cabinet, the Full Cabinet, and coalition party heads. According to Israeli media, Israeli officials said the issue is not the existence of a Palestinian civil administration in Gaza, but the inclusion of Turkey and Qatar on the executive board. Ministers agreed to oppose any Turkish or Qatari role in bodies managing Gaza, citing their political and ideological ties with Hamas. Officials stressed that Turkey is not viewed in Jerusalem as a neutral or legitimate actor. Several ministers reportedly blamed Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, for shaping the board's structure, alleging his regional ties influenced the decision. The Prime Minister's office said Foreign Minister Gideon Saar was instructed to address the issue directly with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio as a way to manage the dispute without escalating tensions between Netanyahu and Trump. Meanwhile, governments across Europe and the Middle East are reacting cautiously. Reuters reported that while invitations were sent to roughly 60 countries, only Hungary has so far given an unequivocal acceptance. Egypt, Jordan, Turkey, and Canada confirmed receiving invitations and said they are reviewing the terms, including financial commitments.
This is a board like no other. It will have the heads of major countries.
Some analysts warn the structure could marginalize Palestinian decision-making.
The board itself, the structure that's been put in place, this two-tiered board of exclusively foreigners with no Palestinians involved.
As Israel weighs its response to President Trump's new Gaza peace framework and raises red flags over who may be shaping Gaza's future, we're now joined by Middle East expert Avi Melamed to break this down. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
So Israel has drawn a hard line against Turkey and Qatar sitting on Trump's new Gaza board of peace. Can you explain why Israel sees their involvement not just as problematic, but as unacceptable and a direct security risk?
The answer is very simple. Both Turkey and Qatar are major supporters of Hamas. Ideologically, politically, operatively. When I'm saying operatively, I mean the fact that both Turkey and Qatar are hosting Hamas senior leadership, including militants of Hamas that are engaged in terror actions. And so hence you can understand why Israel is very unhappy, let's put it this way, with that.
Mm-hmm. Now, Pakistan has now confirmed it received an invitation as well, despite having no ties with Israel and openly accusing it of genocide. How does that affect Israel's trust in this process?
Well, the issue is not about trust. In the end of the day, Israel finds itself in a place where, to a large extent, it has to comply with the U.S. President Donald Trump. He's moving ahead with this program. Apparently, very clearly, he's taking into certain extent Israeli consideration, but mostly not taking Israeli consideration. He's determined to move forward. He declared the beginning of the second phase, and Israel basically has to face effects on the ground, as we see that in the case of Turkey and Qatar.
And what are your thoughts about Vladimir Putin being invited?
I don't know to refer to that. It seems to be something to be more connected to the whole triangle of U.S., Putin, Ukraine issue. I'm not so sure that this is something that is for real, or is there something that is more kind of like on a PR level, to put it this way. At this point, it's very difficult for me to say how, practically speaking, Putin is going to be part of that council that President Trump announced its formation.
And Netanyahu is choosing to address his concerns quietly with Washington via Secretary Rubio rather than publicly confronting President Trump. Is that restraint strategic, do you think, or is there a rift starting to develop here?
Well, if I'm trying to look from Netanyahu's perspective, particularly from a political perspective, I think that Netanyahu identified that development as a negative one for him, particularly, again, in the political context, because it's very clear that if Qatar and Turkey are going to become the major patrons, sort of speaking, of the reality in Gaza post the war, this is definitely not something that Netanyahu could market as what he was constantly marketing, the ultimate triumph. It's far from that. You could see that already even within the right-wing ranks, there is a growing discontent and criticism on Netanyahu. So from Netanyahu's perspective, I think that first and foremost, his resentment, to put it this way, is first and foremost, I would say, fueled by his political calculation. Remember that we are in a year of an elections. Netanyahu was playing the card of the ultimate triumph. As of now, it seems like Israel is definitely cannot mark the ultimate triumph that Netanyahu was constantly marketing to the Israeli public.
Okay, so bottom line, what would need to change for Israel to see this initiative as a stabilizing force in Gaza rather than a strategic risk?
The big story in the end of the day is this whole story of the demilitarization of Hamas. For potentially or theoretically, all the sides are basically complying with United Nations Security Council 2803 that basically calls specifically and clearly for the disarmament of Hamas. Hamas is saying, I'm not going to disarm it myself, and it's very obvious that nobody else is going to disarm Hamas. One cannot, of course, expect that neither Turkey or Qatar, of course, are going to disarm Hamas. And so you got a situation on the ground that, practically speaking, we are going to more or less square one, because Israel could continue and will probably continue and argue that as long as Hamas is not demilitarized, based, again, the international community formal decision, Israel is not going to withdraw from Gaza Strip. Israel is not going to play ball, sort of speaking, with the factors that are supposed to stabilize the situation in Gaza Strip. So all in all, when we look at this situation on the ground, I think that it's going back to square one, particularly in the sense that in the end of the day, President Trump is subscribing the pace of events, the nature of the development of the events. I would even say to a certain extent, subscribing reality to some sort of like an inner agenda of President Trump, and all other players has to basically comply with that inner agenda.
Avi Melamed, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And in other breaking news, a shocking and tragic incident at an unlicensed daycare facility in Jerusalem has left 2 babies dead and at least 55 other toddlers injured. Authorities say the children were likely exposed to carbon monoxide inside the facility. Police have detained 3 caregivers for questioning as the investigation continues. We will continue following this heartbreaking story as it unfolds. The IDF says it carried out airstrikes overnight in Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah rocket launch sites, tunnels, and military infrastructure, as Israel continues to enforce red lines along the northern border. At the same time, Israeli security forces have launched a multi-day counter-terror operation in Judea and Samaria, with increased troop movements and explosions reported as forces operate on the ground. The IDF and Shin Bet say the operation is aimed at dismantling terror networks and protecting Israeli communities, following new intelligence from Gaza indicating Hamas planned raid-style attacks in Judea and Samaria, similarly to October 7th. As a result, the military has updated its threat assessments, treating community raids as a central risk. Defense Minister Israel Katz has ordered Central Command to prepare for expanded operations, building on recent actions in Jenin, Tulkarem, and Nur Shams. 3 new F-35I stealth fighter jets landed in Israel today, the IDF says, boosting the Air Force's fleet to 48 aircraft. The planes arrived from the United States and will join the 116th and 140th squadrons at Nevatim Air Base in the south. The shipment is part of Israel's initial order of 50 F-35s. An additional 25 jets ordered in 2024 are expected to arrive starting in 2028. Military officials stress the arrival is routine and not directly related to current tensions with Iran. Israel's F-35I Adir is primarily used for deep strike, intelligence gathering, and air superiority missions in high-threat environments. Its stealth capabilities allow the Israeli Air Force to operate inside heavily defended airspace without detection, including areas covered by advanced Iranian-made air defense systems. During the multi-front campaign since October 7th, F-35s have been used for precise, high-value target strikes, especially against command centers, weapons depots, and senior militant figures in Gaza and beyond. They have also provided real-time intelligence and targeting data to other aircraft and ground forces, acting as a flying sensor platform. And we've got some exciting news. You can now get Israel updates on our WhatsApp channel. Breaking stories, live updates, and verified reports, all delivered fast and accurate. Just scan the QR code on your screen to join. The IDF has revealed new details about a highly sensitive operation in Gaza that led to the recovery of the body of fallen soldier Staff Sergeant Oron Shaul more than a decade after he was killed and abducted by Hamas. ILTV's Devo Klein has the latest.
Oron Shaul was killed during the 2014 Gaza war, and his remains were held by terror operatives until they were brought home to Israel in January 2025, just days before a ceasefire took effect. The IDF is now disclosing critical intelligence that came from a key figure living at a civilian site in Gaza City. He knew where Shaul's body was believed to be hidden. Troops from the elite Sayeret Matkal unit captured the individual in a clandestine raid. After interrogation by the Shin Bet, he provided precise information leading to the location of the remains. The following day, Shin Bet agents, naval commandos from Shayetet 13, and forces from the 188th Armored Brigade carried out the recovery operation. The IDF stresses the mission was conducted without endangering any living hostages held in Gaza City at the time. Oron Shaul was finally laid to rest in Israel with full military honors, as family members, friends, fellow soldiers, and senior defense officials gathered for an emotional funeral more than a decade after his fall.
U.S. envoy Tom Barak is welcoming a ceasefire announced today in Syria, but on the ground, Israel is closely watching how it impacts Israel's Kurdish allies in Syria. Barak met Syrian President Ahmad al-Shara in Damascus, while a Kurdish leader, Mazloum Abdi Erbil, said the deal marks a pivotal inflection point. Under the agreement, the U.S.-backed Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces will be integrated into Syria's Ministry of Defense, with an immediate ceasefire declared across northeastern Syria. Damascus will take control of border crossings, civilian institutions, and critically oil and gas fields. The deal comes after regime forces backed by Arab tribal fighters seized key energy assets and advanced along the Euphrates, dealing a severe blow to Kurdish autonomy. Not all Kurdish militia leaders have accepted the terms of the ceasefire. Their forces have suffered losses as Damascus moves to consolidate control over Syria's northeast. Anti-government Kurdish leaders are calling for protection from Israel.
نحن طبعا بنعتبر إسرائيل هي دولة قوية بالمنطقة وإسرائيل هي طبعا لها مشروع الأول والأخير نحن بنتمنى إنه الموقف اللي اتخذته بلدان المنطقة باتجاه أي بعض أقليات سوريا تكون نفس الموقف تكون موجود للكرد كمان.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met in Jerusalem with Honduran President-elect Nasser Tito Asfura, signaling a push to deepen ties between the two countries. Asfura, a conservative businessman and former mayor, was elected on a platform focusing on economic stability, infrastructure, and strong relations with the United States and its allies. Honduras has been one of Israel's closest partners in Central America, regularly supporting Israel in international forums and maintaining warm diplomatic and security ties for decades. The country previously moved its embassy to Jerusalem, a step seen in Israel as a major diplomatic gesture. Netanyahu said Israel and Honduras are refashioning their relationship, highlighting cooperation in economy, agriculture, and technology, and telling the president-elect that as far as Israel is concerned, the sky is the limit. Foreign Minister Gideon Saar also hosted President-elect Asfura at the Foreign Ministry during his visit, saying he's certain that under Asfura's leadership, Honduras will once again be one of Israel's close friends and allies, and pledging Israel's support in strengthening bilateral ties after 4 years of leftist rule in the country.
I welcome you in Jerusalem. It's an ancient city, but it's also a city that looks forward to innovation and to cooperation with you and the people of Honduras. I look forward to working with your government, both in economic fields and agriculture and technology, in any of the areas that I think are laid before us. You should know that as far as Israel is concerned, the sky's the limit.
Muchísimas gracias. Gracias, primer ministro. Estoy seguro que todo lo que usted dijo lo vamos a poder hacer juntos para Israel y Honduras y tener esas relaciones estrechas para las próximas décadas, trabajar por la paz, por la amistad, por un futuro, por una América más unida, más democrática, con paz, trabajo y esperanza. Estoy seguro de eso.
Now, from social media influencers to online podcasters, false and inflammatory claims about the Talmud are once again circulating widely. Joining us now in studio is Rabbi Daniel Rowe, who is taking on these accusations head on and explaining why they're both false and dangerous. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
So, Rabbi Rowe, we're seeing a sudden wave of online attacks claiming that the Talmud promotes immoral or violent behavior. What is actually happening right now in the digital space, and why did you feel it was urgent to respond?
Yeah, so it seems that since October 7th, there's been this wave of attempts to attack Israel, attack Jewish people. And one of them has been about the religion. Like we saw it when Netanyahu gave a speech a few weeks after October 7th and said the phrase, remember what Amalek did, which every Jew recognizes. It means never forget when we're attacked. But anti-people latched on that and said, oh, he's referring to Samuel chapter 15 when they went to war against Amalek and is genocidal. The same thing's happening with Talmud. They're going to old quotes that have been long debunked, trying to cherry-pick them, stick them all over social media and say secretly these Jewish people are into killing non-Jews and hating non-Jews. I felt the need to respond when people started reaching out to me, Jews and allies who say we can defend Israel, but we don't know how to defend this. We don't know the Talmud. Right. And so now I put out a bunch of videos that people can use as a resource to know what's really going on and where these are false and made up and so on, or whether just out of context or whatever it is.
It seems so ridiculous, but so important to do this. So now you show that many of these accusations are not new at all, but actually recycled, like you say, recycled medieval polemics that were already debunked centuries ago, like you say. Why do you think these fabrications keep resurfacing? And why are they so effective in today's social media environment?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I mean, the real story is crazy. Is 1871. There was a Vienna professor called August Rohling. He literally published a thing called the Talmudic Jew. He ended up in a court case against the rabbi called Rabbi Bloch, and the court didn't know what to do. They appointed 2 Christian experts who spent 2 years researching, found it was all either fake or out of context. Rohling withdrew, he lost his job, but it was always recycling. Julius Streicher was Hitler's big minister of information. He loved these quotes because it's so easy. A quote, it sounds sincere, sounds real, makes Jews look terrible. After World War II, it went into kind of the Nazi circles, the edge of the web. Since the war began, they've been thrown, whether it's Qatari funding or bots or who knows what, this is like moved in heavily in. And yeah, they're so effective because you believe a quote. It says that sometimes even the line, if you look it up, is actually a true line. Just the context is nothing to do with what it sounds like. So they're extremely effective on social media, and they're playing into this narrative of the Jewish monsters.
And so beyond correcting the bad information, what are real-world dangers? What are the dangers that these distortions pose when they frame Jews as following these secret or perverse laws? What does that mean for broader conversations about anti-Semitism?
Yeah, it absolutely plays into anti-Semitic narratives. The truth is, even if they weren't there, this stuff of the Jews like looking nice on the surface but secretly having this malicious intent is always at the center of anti-Semitic tales. So this just feeds into that. And yes, it's extremely dangerous. It can lead to, apart from demonization of Israel, it can lead to violence against Jews all over the world.
Now, you argue that these attacks often present themselves as ideological critiques rather than anti-Semitism. Why is that distinction misleading? And how should journalists and viewers recognize the difference?
Yeah, so first of all, anti-Semitism is typically like, oh, if we're not racist against Jews, like, I wouldn't, I defend your right to keep your religion, then I can't be anti-Semitic. Anti-Semitic is this kind of social pathology of Jew demonization. And this stuff is the perfect weapon of Jew demonization. You see, you can't attack the Bible because Christians believe in the Bible, but you can attack the Talmud, and most people never read it, don't know it. And so journalists or anyone just seeing this stuff online should find people who know what they're talking about. Don't take our word for it, but allow us to walk you through. First of all, you'll find about a third of the quotes are literally made up nonsense. Another third are just radically out of context, like literally, there's a line, for example, that in the middle of the Egyptians pursuing the Israelites into the sea, a rabbi says the best of them should be killed. Take that line out of context, the best of all non-Jews should be killed. It's absurd, but you need to see the context. Then you need to see Talmud is extremely complex, right? Large, you can debate something for pages. You could literally have a hypothesis that's rejected. There's a very famous one. There's a hypothesis, could it be okay to steal from a non-Jew? And it's rejected. But if you take the hypothesis, so let somebody show you through, let's see them what's really going on, and almost all of these will just dissolve. Judaism is a religion that believes in the value of all human beings. The Talmud says all human beings are created in the image of God and are beloved. That's what we believe. And the attempt to demonize us is a part of this broader attempt to paint Jews as demons.
Well, Rabbi Rowe, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Cloudy skies and partly rainy showers are expected around most of the country tonight, with temperatures reaching lows of 7 degrees Celsius or 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we'll see clear skies alongside steady temperatures, seeing highs of 15 degrees Celsius or 58 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels and keep up with us on social media. That's at ILTV_Israel on all platforms. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Sivan Raviv. Be well, be safe, and thank you so much for watching.
This is the largest massacre of Iranians in recent history.
Many of us cannot reach our friends or family, and it's kind of like one half of our world went dark in an instant. Not only is it one of the most brutal crackdowns in the history of the Islamic regime, but it's also just one of the most brutal crackdowns in our modern era.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Off the Record. This is a place where we take a step back from the noise surrounding the news and take some time to deep dive into the stories beyond the headlines. And this week, to say that there's a lot to unpack would be an understatement. It has been a very heavy couple of weeks for anyone who is paying attention to what's happening in Iran. Frankly, we should all be paying attention. When the protests initially began a month ago now, I was really hopeful and inspired by watching people take to the streets and fight for their liberation. The 12-day war between Israel and Iran last June exposed just how weak this regime really is, and for the first time there was real hope because we saw that this regime can be toppled if enough pressure is applied. And now, seeing just how brutally the regime has cracked down on these protesters has been devastating. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, has for the first time publicly acknowledged that thousands of people were killed during these protests, even describing some of the deaths as having occurred in the most inhumane and savage manner. At the same time, Khamenei blamed the United States for the deaths, more specifically, U.S. President Donald Trump, calling him a criminal. Regime officials who've spoken to Western media with easy access to Wi-Fi, by the way, have labeled Iranian protesters as terrorists, blaming Israel and the United States for the uprising. Because of the internet blackout, there's still no way to verify the true numbers of people killed, but the Sunday Times did report that the regime's crackdown left about 16,500 people dead and over 330,000 injured. This is the largest massacre of Iranians in recent history. A UK parliamentary report states that it has credible sources indicating that some type of chemical weapon was used against protesters, resulting in more deaths later. It is also believed that at least 5,000 Iraqi proxy militia terrorists were imported to suppress the protests violently. What we've seen so far has been absolutely heartbreaking and devastating. There's footage of families having to search through hundreds of bodies to find their loved ones. There's footage of the regime brutally beating protesters and even entering hospitals to kill some of the injured. The regime is demanding that families pay 1 billion tomans in order to receive the body of their loved one, or have them sign a false confession in order to release the bodies for burial. A maximum of 3 to 4 people are permitted to attend a funeral. Protests have largely been violently suppressed, and Iran is essentially under a state of martial law. In most cities, regime forces are in military gear, patrolling the streets and threatening residents with loudspeakers not to assemble. Last week, when President Donald Trump encouraged protesters to keep going and said help was on the way, many believed the U.S. would carry out a strike, and yet, for now, nothing seems to be happening. Is this just a ploy? Is the U.S. biding its time? Or is this yet another tragic and failed attempt by Iranians to free themselves from the shackles of this regime? The only thing we do know for sure is that the story's not yet over. So where do we go from here? Joining me today is a guest who brings expertise and personal experience to the conversation. We are joined today by Sarah Raviani, a political commentator and strategic communications professional specializing in Iran, the Middle East, and U.S. foreign policy. She has extensive experience across American, Iranian, Arab, and Israeli political circles with a background in legislative advocacy, grassroots organizing, and coalition building. Sarah has worked directly with Congress on national security and foreign policy issues, contributing to key legislative efforts, including the 21st Century Peace Through Strength Act, and amplifying Iranian American voices through policy analysis, media engagement, and public advocacy. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, I want to first begin by expressing my deepest sympathy and condolences for what the Iranian community are going through, because I know that after October 7th, one of the things I really wish was someone to acknowledge the pain that we were going through as the Jewish community. And so I can't imagine what it's been like as somebody that is a member of the Iranian diaspora community right now. Can you please shed light for us on what you're going through, what your community is going through right now?
Our community is facing a very sad situation, watching from afar our people in Iran being slaughtered. And not only that, but the internet has been cut off. So there's a complete and total communications blackout. So many of us cannot reach our friends or family. And it's kind of like one half of our world went dark in an instant.
I can imagine how difficult that's been. Have you been able to connect with any family, friends, loved ones in Iran at all?
It's been very intermittent. We don't know how our family members are doing. Friends have completely gone silent. Social media accounts have completely gone silent. The little interactions that you experience on a day-to-day basis are just completely gone. The world feels a little bit darker and a lot quieter and a lot more lonely without that part of our world being connected to us. And watching what they're going through in the streets has been extremely difficult. And I want to stress just how dire the situation is. The people that are in Iran that have been able to connect to the outside world briefly have expressed just how dire and chaotic the situation is. And many of them are extremely traumatized by what they saw in the streets and the sheer brutality of what the regime has subjected their people to.
If we rewind to about a week ago, U.S. President Donald Trump took to his Truth Social to encourage Iranians to keep protesting. And he said help was on the way. And in fact, all of us in Israel were bracing ourselves for the retaliation. We knew that a U.S. strike would mean that we would spend the next several weeks in bomb shelters and underground bunkers, and we were ready for that if it meant to finally see the end of this regime. And it seems that we are at a standstill right now. Do you have any understanding of why this is happening? You know, what's going on? Is this a ploy?
This is very reminiscent to me of what happened prior to the 12-day war, when there was a lot of confusion. We didn't know what was going to happen. And President Trump, I think, has been not as forthcoming with what his plans are in relation to Iran, because we kind of have to keep them on their toes. I think that that's part of the military strategy here, and that ambiguity is actually an important element of surprise for the regime, so that they don't know what's coming next. And because of that, that's created a lot of hearsay. A lot of people are on the edge of their seats waiting for what happens next. And I actually think that that's a very important element of surprise.
Okay, well, I want to ask you about Iran in general, because now that it's in the media, a lot of people have become geopolitical experts. But even myself, I would say that I've heard from so many analysts that Iranians inside of Iran, for the most part, do not support this regime at all. But the reality is that the regime does have some type of support, which is why it's still in power. So can you give our audience a little bit of an understanding of what the makeup of the population is? Are there groups that are like, the MEK that are, even worse in some regards, if you want to talk about it? Or are most Iranians actually these secular people that want the regime gone? Give us a sense of the population of Iran.
So I would say at least 90% of the population does not support the Islamic regime. And in fact, many of them have become increasingly secular, especially the young Generation Z, who have completely rejected Islam as a whole. There is ideological support from the very upper echelons of the leadership of the regime, as well as the IRGC. But average, everyday people do not support the regime, and likewise, they don't support the MEK. The MEK has tried to create a sense of support through buying politicians and buying space in media circles, but the reality is that they largely reject the MEK and in turn actually support the Crown Prince of Iran, Reza Pahlavi. And we saw that in the protests when the youth rose up, they were all chanting his name in the streets.
Right now, we have in Iran, you have the Basij, right, that I think are in charge of the imposing the sort of civilian, I guess, day-to-day crackdown. You have the IRGC, which is directly loyal to the regime, and you have the Iranian army. Can you give us a sense of everything in Iran regarding the, I would say, military apparatus? And is it possible, if we talk about toppling the regime in general, would we not need these three elements to also be either deflecting or toppled as well? And does that require more than just a strike in order to do so?
Absolutely. And I feel like that's the missing piece here that we haven't seen are military defections. And I believe that that support is not only ideological because the religion and the regime are one in the same. So abandoning one means abandoning the other. But the security apparatus is very vast. Like you mentioned, the Basij force is the paramilitary force. They're the plainclothes guards that walk the streets and patrol in usually civilian clothing. The IRGC is the terror apparatus that is basically the Hamas or the ISIS of Iran. Very, very, very similar. That is the force that really clamps down on the protests, and that's the force that you see going out there and just indiscriminately firing on civilians, including a 3-year-old little girl who was walking to grocery shop with her dad in a bazaar, and the IRGC just openly fired, shot her with a pellet gun, and she unfortunately passed away. And so that's the terror that Iranians are experiencing on a daily basis. Even just innocent young little girls are being killed by this regime. The Iranian army is a complete separate entity. It's technically still part of the IRGC, but there is not that ideological loyalty. However, they don't wield the same power that the IRGC possesses.
Interesting. And there has never been an interest by the Iranian army to want to actually defend Iranians?
I believe that there is, and we have seen defections here and there, especially on social media, where members of the military will come out and say that, they are with the people. But as far as a large-scale defection, we just haven't seen that yet. And again, I do believe that that is the missing piece here. And I do believe that that's where targeted strikes could really help in that effort to move it forward. If they see a decapitation in leadership, I believe that it will cause the lower levels of the security forces to defect. And I believe that that would really change the course of what we see happening on the ground in Iran. We need to see the security forces lay down their arms and stand with their people. Otherwise, we're going to see massacre after massacre where we've in this past few weeks seen just tens of thousands of people being mowed down by the regime. They stand from higher levels and they shoot down into the crowds. And those are the defections that we need to see, where there's an alternative. And those people see that if they defect and stand with the Iranian people, then they too can be saved from this brutal regime.
Speaking of a strike, which you and I have mentioned multiple times since we begun this conversation, I really want to address what I think a lot of people in the American left are worried about right now, which is foreign intervention and how that affects a revolution. Now, I have read in the past that foreign intervention is always something that if you want to suppress a revolution, then foreign intervention is the way to go, because it doesn't create legitimacy internally. And oftentimes it creates this like rally around the flag that a lot of people, once they begun to get attacked by foreign entities, will, feel like they want to fight back. And so I want to ask you, why do you think this time is different? Why would you think a strike would actually be effective? And why, how do we ensure that that we don't create this rally around the flag situation in Iran?
So I think that Iran is a very different country in the Middle East, particularly, but globally, we don't see very many countries like Iran where you have such a young, educated, brilliant population that really is yearning for change and also yearning to be free of the shackles of the Islamic regime. And so after the 12-day war, we did not see a rally around the flag effect. However, I do believe that people were a little bit confused because they thought after the 12-day war or during the war that people would come out into the streets and rise up against the regime. We did not see that, but I don't think that that's an indication that there was a rally around the flag effect. I think that in that instance, it was a very tense environment with the strikes happening, as well as the security forces heavily patrolling each corner of every street, making it pretty much impossible for the people to rise up. But I do believe that the 12-day war was very important because it showed Iranians both inside the country and outside the country that the regime is not as strong as it appears. It's actually a lot more fragile. And I believe that that led to what we saw in the past few weeks, where people did have the courage to rise up because they saw, the regime really isn't as strong as we think it is. So I believe that there are several levels where a foreign intervention, if you will, would actually be very important. And it would also give an opportunity for the people to rise up because the security apparatus would be dealing with external pressures. And I know that there's a lot of people who are opponents of foreign intervention and that they say, we shouldn't get involved. But the truth is that the Islamic regime has been at war with the West and with the entire region for the past 47 years. And they themselves have their own foreign intervention with their proxies like Hezbollah and the Iraqi Shia militias who have come into Iran by the busloads to suppress the people. So there already is foreign intervention, and we didn't start this war. The Islamic regime started this war on the day of its inception when it took dozens of Americans hostage during the Iran hostage crisis.
That's very interesting that you bring it up. I never even thought about how during the 12-day war, we didn't see this rally around the flag. So one of the main arguments, I guess, for people who are worried about that and pushing that argument is that we've already seen some version, some test case of the regime being attacked by a foreign entity. In that case, it was directly Israel. And they're Iranians, I remember seeing footage of them even celebrating while it was happening. So I think that's a very strong case that you just made. I want to ask you, if a military strike is off the table, what is another way that the entire Western world could actually support Iranians right now? For me, at the very least, every Western leader should be ensuring that their Iranian ambassador has been expelled. To make it very, very clear that we're not okay with this. What else could Western leaders be doing to support Iranians right now?
So at the very basic level, I think that all world leaders should very much watch their rhetoric and be sure that they're supporting the people of Iran in the way that they speak. They don't understand just how much that matters to the people. And I know that there's a communications blackout right now, but when the Iranians are reconnected to the internet, I know that they're going to come back and they're going to see everything that each world leader had to say. And I know that that will make a difference in the future for them. So at the very, very bottom level, I think we need to see a very strong rhetoric in support of the people of Iran and against the Islamic Republic. Beyond that, economic pressure is very important. Here in the United States, President Trump's economic policy of maximum pressure towards the regime has really crippled the upper echelons of the leadership. And we've seen that even with the Treasury Secretary coming out this past week and noting that the Iranian officials are moving their money into offshore bank accounts, like in Dubai, for example. So economic pressure is extremely important. We've seen the rial drop to levels that are, extremely low, at zero, not even worth the paper that it's printed on. So I believe that that's very important, because at the end of the day, any economic relief only benefits the regime. And we've seen that time and time again in the past. So economic pressure, and then as well as in Europe, prescribing the IRGC as a terrorist organization, that's a very, very basic step that the UK can do. And the UK really does need to step it up and really apply pressure to the regime in an economic fashion, and also in their rhetoric. I believe that they're really falling short on that. And so I believe that the rest of the world should take President Trump's approach to the regime and really apply that economic pressure, provide words of support for the people, and hold the Islamic Republic accountable.
There's a lot of talk about, Reza Pahlavi, the former crown prince, or the son of the former Shah, to be a figure that would lead Iran if the regime were to topple, as some transition figure. But how do we ensure that within, after his term is over and democratic elections are being held, that it doesn't turn into what Hamas did in Gaza, or that it doesn't turn into another Syria? I know you mentioned that Iranians are, for the most part, very young and progressive, and they don't want to see this type of power. But how do we ensure that there isn't some vacuum that fills the void in the future?
So for the Crown Prince specifically, Reza Pahlavi, he is, I believe, an amazing figure to lead the transition. He's very patient, he's very even-tempered, and he really does listen to the concerns of those around him. And I think those are three qualities in a leader that we really should expect. And I also very much respect him for that. And so I don't believe there to be any issue with Reza Pahlavi as a transition figure. And the people of Iran, likewise, very much do support him. And so I believe that that would be just a match made in heaven. And also, we've seen the nostalgia. And I think that the people of Iran, especially the youth, they go back and they look at the time when his father and grandfather were running the country, and they see that the prosperity that was present. And we hear stories from our parents and our grandparents talking about the Pahlavi era and just how prosperous it was. And so I believe that if we give him a chance, that he could actually lead the country to greatness, and that he would open up the door for a referendum where the Iranian people could have a say in their own future. And that ultimately should be left up to the Iranian people, because they've been robbed of that right for so long to decide what type of governance and who they want to specifically govern them.
My last question to you is, I've seen the American far left and the woke right respond to the situation, and I'm definitely not surprised by some of their rhetoric. It's just very difficult to see what's happening in Iran and to see the complete silence from people that were so vocal about Gaza, not just in those movements, but in Hollywood, how mainstream the suffering, talking about the suffering in Gaza was, without the entire context of why that suffering was happening and who was perpetuating it. And then to see this complete silence on Iran, or this whitewashing of Maduro, the Venezuelan narco dictator that, thank God, is now in U.S. custody. What is your response to that and to those people?
It's very upsetting, especially as an Iranian American, when I see just the sheer brutality of this regime. We have to put into perspective, over a 48-hour period, tens of thousands of people were killed. And not only is it one of the most brutal crackdowns in the history of the Islamic regime, but it's also just one of the most brutal crackdowns in our modern era of a state just cracking down and indiscriminately slaughtering their people. So to see this complete silence is very frustrating, and it's honestly just sad, but I don't really expect anything different. For several years, even at the beginning of my advocacy for Iran, the pro-Palestine group was very hostile, and that's continued to this day. You know, they threaten us, they are very nasty, and they're very mean, and the causes just don't align, because at the end of the day, what the pro-Palestinian people are chanting for is for basically essentially a continuation of Hamas, and who are the funders of Hamas, the Islamic regime. So they're two very opposing ideas. And I think that even some Iranians have had a hard time grasping that and realizing that they're really just not our friends, they're not our allies, and they're not on our side. And we can't look to people that have that very performative activism for any sort of support. And honestly, I don't really want them to support us, because their cause is not what I feel is a just cause. And the Iranian people deserve better advocates than what we see from those groups.
Well, you know, the only silver lining here is that I think the relationship between the Iranian community and the Jewish community has definitely increased here. We had a rally here in Israel, and it was just beautiful to see the Persian Israelis come out and people from all walks of life come out. And so the same way that the Iranian community really came out to support us after October 7th, I hope your community knows that you have allies here. You have allies all over the Jewish community. And Sarah, I want to close off by just saying that I hope, you know, in the coming months, we'll be able to speak to each other face to face, but in Tehran.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to thank the people of Israel tremendously for all of their support. And I really do believe that our historic friendship will continue, and it'll only just grow over time. And I'm very, very thankful for both the Israeli people and the Jewish community here in the United States for really standing up for the people of Iran in their darkest hour and showing us that kindness and that friendship, because it really is important during these dark times. So thank you so much.
I want to thank all of you for tuning in today on Off the Record, where our goal is to fight through the noise and get to the stories beyond the headlines. We'll continue to monitor what's happening in Iran, Israel, and the entire Middle East to keep you informed as things develop, and we are praying for better days ahead. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, India. And moving on, Israel is harnessing the power of bioconvergence, merging biology and technology to revolutionize the future of food and sustainability. Let's take a look.
The world is facing a crisis of food scarcity, which we already feel in the price of basic food, which keeps hiking up. This challenge is faced head-on with the help of bioconvergence, a combination of biology and technology that produces solutions to various global challenges. In Israel, the groundbreaking approach is revolutionizing food technology and reshaping the global economy. For example, each year, 8 billion fertilized male eggs are destroyed after weeks of incubation, costing billions and raising ethical concerns. Enter Exit, an Israeli startup rewriting the rules of the livestock industry. Co-founded by a neuroscientist and a lawyer whose family raised chickens, the company created a way to determine a chick's sex before it hatches. Using genetics and optical sensors, Exit's non-invasive device scans each egg at the speed of light, detecting 6 specific biomarkers through the shell. The eggs are automatically sorted, saving time, money, and resources, and sparing billions of lives.
Israel has a great innovation ecosystem, which is why so many food tech and other tech companies are mushrooming here. And the system also supports innovation and out-of-the-box thinking and pushing the limits of what solutions can be.
Another Israeli company, Genesee, is tackling global sustainability from the sea. By harnessing macroalgae, they produce high-quality, plant-based proteins for the food industry, reducing deforestation, conserving fresh water, and offering a sustainable source of nutrition.
Bioconvergence is quite a complex thing because we connect here engineering, science, biology, medicine, food tech, agriculture, so many things which are coming together, and their actual role is to solve real problems.
Both companies credit Israeli Innovation Authority and its National Bioconvergence Program for driving this new wave of breakthroughs. The program invests directly in pioneering projects, builds cutting-edge research infrastructure, and ensures the right talent enters the industry. By fostering collaboration and streamlining regulation, it helps companies bring products from the lab to the global market faster than ever. Bioconvergence is more than science. It's the fusion of biology, creativity, technology, and purpose. From sustainable protein to ethical farming, Israel's innovators are proving that when biology meets technology, the future of food is already here and knows no boundaries. To learn more about Israel's Bioconvergence program, visit the website.
To ILTV on the Hour. I'm Devo Klein, coming to you live from Israel, breaking down all of the biggest headlines that are coming out of the region. American forces are in motion today in the region, with tensions between the United States and Iran calming but not diminishing, and speculation remains that the U.S. could strike the Islamic regime in Iran in the coming days. The USS Abraham Lincoln has been spotted overnight entering the Malacca Strait between Malaysia and Indonesia, moving from its original post in the South China Sea days ago. The warship is now within striking distance of Iran in the Arabian Sea. Iran's leadership may be entering its final days, as President Trump is now poised with all military options available to attack Iran if he so chooses. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz is now the first leader to predict the early fall of the Ayatollah's regime. Speaking during a visit in India, Merz said this.
Mich besorgen im Augenblick die Nachrichten über eine immer höhere Gewaltbereitschaft der Polizei, der sogenannten Revolutionsgarden in Iran gegen die eigene Bevölkerung. Ich will die Gelegenheit nutzen, noch einmal das Mullah-Regime aufzufordern, diese Gewalt sofort einzustellen. Wenn sich ein Regime nur noch mit Gewalt an der Macht halten kann, dann ist es faktisch am Ende. Ich gehe davon aus, dass wir jetzt hier auch gerade die letzten Tage und Wochen dieses Regimes sehen.
And a signing ceremony for U.S. President Donald Trump's proposed Board of Peace is set for Thursday in Davos on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum, according to an invitation circulating online and cited by Israeli reporters. The White House is calling on chiefs of state and government to sign the Board of Peace Charter this week. President Isaac Herzog is expected to attend the forum, while Prime Minister Netanyahu will not, although he did confirm he was invited to join the body. The board's final makeup remains unclear, with some leaders committed and others expressing reservations. And in Israel, the reservations for Trump's Board of Peace are evident, with Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich strongly opposing Phase 2 of the Gaza plan. According to the minister, Hamas must be dealt with more aggressively in order to fully disarm the terror group, and Israel should not be cooperating with hostile countries. Have a listen.
הגיעה העת לפרק את המפקדה בקריית גת, לסלק משם מדינות כמו מצרים ובריטניה שעוינות את ישראל וחותרות תחת ביטחונה, להציב לחמאס אולטימטום קצרצר לפירוק והגליה אמיתיים ומיד עם פקיעתו, להסתער על רצועת עזה בכל הכוח, להשמיד את חמאס צבאית, אזרחית ושלטונית, לפתוח את מעבר רפיח עם או בלי הסכמה מצרית, ולאפשר לתושבי עזה לצאת ממנה ולחפש את עתידם במקום אחר, שבו הם לא יסכנו את עתיד ילדיהם.
His opinion, of course, opposes Netanyahu's, who spoke in the Knesset yesterday and reiterated Trump's commitment to Israel's demands of disarming Hamas and demilitarizing the Gaza Strip. He said Israel will not accept partial measures or symbolic steps, stressing that Hamas cannot remain an armed force in the Strip under any circumstances, making clear that Israel will attempt the diplomatic route, but may also use military means to achieve these goals. And no All-Stars for Avdia? After a major breakout season and many predictions of his participation, Avdia has been snubbed from the NBA's 2026 All-Star Games. Just 24 hours after scoring 30 points in a win over Sacramento, it was revealed that Avdia finished 7th in fan voting, falling just short of becoming the first Israeli player to start an NBA All-Star Game. The Portland forward is averaging more than 26 points and 7 rebounds and nearly 7 assists per game this season, numbers that have put him firmly in the All-Star conversation. Avdia can still, though, make history through the coaches' vote to be announced February 1st, as the Western Conference starters include Nikola Jokic, Luka Doncic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Steph Curry, and Victor Wembanyama. And finally, we've got some exciting news. You can now get Israel updates on our WhatsApp channel, breaking stories, live updates, and verified reports, all delivered fast and accurate. Just scan the QR code on your screen. Thank you so much for watching.
Looking for some guidance for when to tell someone you've had breast cancer and a mastectomy, no reconstruction if you haven't yet met in person.
So I don't think it's relevant if you're not meeting in person. Like, we need to meet in person. Right. I need to see, do we have a little chemistry between us? Do I like you? Do you like me? Is it mutual? Is there something going on? We need to get past, there's beginning, middle, and end stage of dating. Beginning dating is question. Do I like you? Do you like me? We need to get past that. We need to be to a stage where, yeah, I like you. You like me. Oh, there's something here. We're dating. We're not serious and ready to get married, but I trust you. There's something going on. When should I say it? When you're important to me and I feel important to you and we're looking to build something, then we start to open up. Welcome to the Jewish Matchmaker podcast on ILTV. I'm Aliza Ben Shalom, your host, and today we are taking your questions. If you've been thinking about dating, relationships, if you've got something going on and you're like, oh, I don't know what to do, and you just want answers, you can message us at Aliza Ben Shalom on Instagram or at marriagemindedmentor.com//podcasts. Anyway, we want to hear from you, and we have questions today that Sarah is going to read out to us, and hopefully you'll gain some clarity, some wisdom, and walk away with something to change your life or advice for somebody else.
Amazing. We diving right in. You ready?
Let's go.
Question number 1. Hi, Aliza. I've been dating my boyfriend for about 6 months now. We waited about 5 months for him to meet my 3-year-old daughter, and they hit it off. About a month into our relationship, he was told that in January he will be laid off from his very good job. Once laid off, he'll still get 10 months worth of salary plus unemployment. He's also renting out his house for income while looking for a new job. My mom doesn't think he should move in or be around my daughter all that much until he finds a job, but we just don't know how long that will be. He did tell me if he doesn't find a job right away, he'll take any job to bring in more income. I see a life with this person, and I feel that leaving him because he lost his job is unfair because he really checks all my boxes. Can you please give me any advice on what I should do and how to handle things with my mom?
Okay, love this question. So thank you for bringing it to the light and bringing it to the table. I think that when we are talking about jobs, they come and go, right? You have employment today, you don't have employment next week, something comes around and it's even better and more amazing, but it only lasts 2 years and then something new comes. But what I heard in the question was, but he's willing to take anything to make it work, like to get by for now. Motivation matters more than the job itself. The fact that he is willing to do something to make a shift, even if it's temporary, while still looking for something more permanent, that to me is golden, because Doesn't matter what happens. Doesn't matter how many jobs he'd end up losing. He's always going to look for something. Now, I'm going to take that back for a minute because it does matter if he would continuously lose jobs. But it sounds like this is a man, right, consistent.
No, he's had this job
stable,
for a while. Yeah.
Right, totally reliable.
Yeah.
So I think, first of all, it sounds like you have a gem of a human, number one. Second of all, I think that you should stick with him. I just want to address like the moving in together thing because I think that that's the second piece that you didn't. You asked the question, but it was more about the job.
It was. The question was, her mom doesn't think that he should move in yet without a job and not to be around her kid all that much.
Right. So I agree with not being around the kid that much.
Okay.
And I agree with not moving in, but not because of the job.
Tell me more.
Right. So I think that he shouldn't move in because with children, it is very difficult. They have, in their head, somebody moves in, that's their new father. That's a replacement human for somebody in their life or somebody that they never had. And if you're not engaged, you're not married, you're not moving towards building a life together, then this person can come in and out of your life. And that's not very stable or fair to the child. And it's not healthy, if we're being really honest. So I would really say that it's important that you consider where this relationship is going. And if it's moving towards engagement, marriage, great. At that time, he can move in. The moving in situation to me has nothing to do with the job. Although I happen to agree with your mom. Don't move in.
Right. Okay. So it sounds like he's a good human. Definitely don't give him up because he lost his job, because he seems like the type of person who's going to do what it takes to get the income.
Right.
Not moving in, also good point, but nothing to do with the job.
Right. Totally different reason.
Okay.
Next
All right,
question.
Next question. This comes in from Camilla. I've been seeing someone for 4 dates now. He's super attentive, understanding, wants to get married and have kids, but he's much slower than I am. He doesn't like traveling, doesn't enjoy leaving the place where he was born and raised, which is Brooklyn, and I'm totally the opposite. I feel like there's chemistry, but our personalities are very different. What do I do?
It's so interesting because when we have a values alignment and a values conflict simultaneously, it pulls at the heart and the head. Like it kind of, it's really confusing because our values and like who we are and what we want in, let's say, a family is aligned, but what we want in a lifestyle is not aligned. So
wait. I love how you just like split that up. Family versus lifestyle.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Those are the two things. And the family part makes sense. And then the question is, but how are you going to live the lifestyle? So for anybody who is single and looking and loves to travel, if you're going to build your life around traveling, okay, so build your life around traveling with your family. Most families don't do that.
Right.
It's pretty common to just have a place, settle down, be where you are, maybe go on vacation a couple times a year, once a year, whatever it is. But to actually have a lifestyle that's like active and go, it's a different kind of go, right? We're going to school. We're going to pick somebody up. We're going to drop somebody off. We're going to do a play date. So it's not, the life that you have now isn't the same kind of life. Now, we also have before kids, and then after kids. And that lifestyle isn't going to necessarily align.
I feel like those of us who are still single don't fully get that. Or those of us who don't have kids yet don't realize how much it's going to change.
Right. So the other thing is also it changes drastically with children. But then as you grow up, so like our kids, our youngest is 12, our oldest is almost 22. And we're in such a different stage, and we have different hobbies/interests. So we really like to do very different things. Like we went on one vacation, and he's like, "Let's go fishing," and I was like, "I'm not going fishing."
Let's not.
I was like, "Let's go for a bike ride," and he's like, "I'll meet you for lunch." I was like, "Yes." I'm so excited to meet you for lunch. And then we met for lunch. And I was like, great, how was fishing? He's like, awesome. He's like, how's the bike ride? I was like, I loved it, right? We had a fabulous time. But we did go somewhere. Like we did travel, not so far. We went, we drove an hour and a half. We stayed, at a hotel near the beach and just took a day or two to ourselves to relax without the kids. But it wasn't traveling the world. And we never really built our life and our lifestyle on that. If I had a partner that was chasing to travel the world and I just wanted to build a family, it would be very hard. had. So I think that she needs to just take a moment and ask herself, how much travel do I need? And visualize it out. What does it look like? Like, think about the whole year from beginning to end. How many trips are you taking? What kind of trips are you taking? How far are you going? And he's going to move at a slower pace. Can you slow your pace down? Maybe he speeds his up a little and you meet somewhere in the middle. Or maybe you're going to say, no, our preferences are too different, even though our values are aligned.
Right. I almost feel like there's also room for compromise in the sense of, like, if he's not looking to move out of Brooklyn, let's say, right? Where can she find her adventure within that? Like, do they take 2 or 3 big family trips a year that he's willing to go on, knowing that they, you know, stay in Brooklyn?
Or can't she can travel on her own. I know some people are like, but I want to travel with my partner. But you don't have to. You can travel with friends. You can travel with other family members, coworkers. There's so many other people to do that with. And you can live your life with a person who has your values, your day-to-day values, versus your lifestyle or hobbies or interests.
Which, by the way, I feel like people don't talk about enough. I was just talking to a friend about this. I feel like people don't talk enough about how important it is, and also how you absolutely could do a girlfriend getaway.
Right.
Like, you can, and satisfy that need and that desire to get out and travel and explore or whatever. If your husband's not that type, you don't need to do it with him.
And you don't have to give it up because he doesn't want to do it. You just build your life and your lifestyle around it. So my advice to the listeners, get a little creative. Explore this. Don't give it up. You have values that are in alignment, and explore how could this work and see if it can. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. You can move on, but at least you'll have fully looked into it in a way that's really appropriate without ditching him too soon.
Amazing. Perfect. Love it. Okay, next question from Jessica. Eliza, thank you for all the information you provide. I'm 55 years old, 1 year divorced, and just about to put myself out in the dating world again. Looking for some guidance for when to tell someone you've had breast cancer and a mastectomy, no reconstruction if you haven't yet met in person.
If you haven't met in person, so I don't think it's relevant if you're not meeting in person. Like, we need to meet in person. I need to see. Do we have a little chemistry between us? Do I like you? Do you like me? Is it mutual? Is there something going on? We need to get past, there's beginning, middle, and end stage of dating. Beginning dating is question. Do I like you? Do you like me? We need to get past that. We need to be to a stage where, yeah, I like you. You like me. Oh, there's something here. We're dating. We're not serious and ready to get married, but I trust you. There's something going on. I would say also it's going to depend on how soon physical intimacy comes up in your relationship.
Right.
My advice anyway is to do the 5-date challenge with no touching. And if you want to do a 10-date challenge or take things further or slower, with pleasure. I'd be like, yes, it's a great method for building connection.
Yeah.
There's so many reasons that this could be beneficial to you outside of your own medical personal reason, where this could just benefit you to delay having a conversation that is only relevant to somebody that's important to you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the moment, because everybody's like, but when should I say it? When you're important to me and I feel important to you, and we're looking to build something, then we start to open up. And I wouldn't start by sharing that as your first share, like as we open up to whatever our, as people would call it, skeletons in the closet, or those hidden private things that we don't share with everybody. I would start with something small.
Right.
Something, I don't know, almost insignificant compared to that. Share. Let them share. Build the connection. And then say, you know, I had a medical procedure, and here's, you know, the story, and here's what happened, and here's where I'm at today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also give somebody information, because if my mind is wandering, well, what happened? Well, how are you? Well, what's going to be? Well, right? All of a sudden I'm spinning out in my thinking. Right. Past, I had this thing. This is what happened. Present, here's where my health is today. Future, wow, other than X, Y, and Z, this isn't really going to affect me because it's clear I'm in remission. Everything's okay, da-da-da. We do or don't know whether it's genetic. We do, like, whatever information you want to share, you could share.
Mm-hmm.
And to open your heart to having somebody receive really personal information that's private and confidential, that's not open to the world. That means your relationship's at a certain level, and then you see how that carries. And can this person hold that in the relationship and still figure out how to move ahead?
It's so interesting because, listen, I'm not a guy, so I know it's different. But I feel like, to me, from this whole question, I'm so much more interested about what that journey was like and how that changed her as a person and what did that mean for herself, for her relationship with God, for a relationship with her family, for a relationship with her friends. Like, there's so much, to me, the mastectomy is like the side point. And I know like the physical piece is important, but it just feels, I'm almost curious why that's the first thing that she's asking.
Well, what do you mean that she's...
Meaning, like, why is that the question that comes up?
There's nothing, everything else for her is normal in her life. And she's like, okay, so I got to share something.
Right.
I had a man once tell me he was 25 and he had testicular cancer. He had everything taken care of, kids, the whole thing. He had his whole story. He knew everything. He said, same question, when do I share this information?
Right.
And how do I share it? And will somebody accept me? And I always tell people, thank you, because that's the answer, yes. And I always tell people we all have something. Either it's something known or it's something unknown.
Yes.
Okay? So somebody who comes to you and says, well, I had cancer and I had this medical thing that I dealt with or I am dealing with. That's known. Now, you meet somebody else and they're like, no, I have nothing. I am just perfect. Everything is fine. Yeah. It's not that you have nothing. It's just that...
What's hidden?
Right. Today, there's nothing for you to share.
Right.
But in the course of your entire lifetime, we got about a 99.9% chance that you're going to be sharing something pretty significant.
I feel like we can make it 100.
Okay.
It's so funny because this reminds me when I was dating, when I was still very much in the shidduch system, I started dating. My parents were married. They got divorced when I was 21. And I remember the difference in going to matchmakers from when from before they were divorced to after they were divorced. All of a sudden, all of the matchmakers were asking me, so how are you handling the divorce? What does that mean for your dating? Things are obviously changing now. And I'm like, no, they're not.
Nothing changed for me.
You know about it. But I've known everything I've known and everything that I've had to like process and go through and the way it affected my dating affected it way before they ever publicly got divorced.
Right.
And I think like that's so your point is like just because you know it, or don't know it, still affected my life in one way or another. And that's what I'm going to share.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
We never know. We just never know. And what you want to know is, A, that somebody knows what's going on with their health. I'll tell you what I'm scared of.
Yeah.
I'm scared of a person who says to me, I haven't seen a doctor in the last 10 years, healthy as a horse, and everything's fine. And I'm like, so interesting. Now, you don't have to be a hypochondriac and go for every sneeze, but to not go for 10 years, to not have an evaluation, to not have a checkup, to not just have some assessment of where you're at, you don't have enough information to share.
Right.
So then there's a really big unknown, number one. And number two, it means you're likely not to take care of things until either A, it comes up, or it's way too late. So somebody who found out about something and is proactive and has taken care of it, and the body has an incredible power to heal. Really incredible power to heal. If we would let it, if we would assist it, if we would be a part of this process. So I'm so much more afraid of the person that says, I'm not going to the doctor. Same thing, like, I'm not going to go to a therapist. I'm fine. Everything's fine, right? I'm scared of that person more than somebody who says, I had a problem. I worked through it. I'm on the other side. Here's where I'm at.
Right. Yes. Okay. Love it. Thank you. Next question comes from Mark. Hi, Eliza. I've been stuck on the same thought and haven't been able to work through it by myself, and it's really weighing me down. How do I feel ready to date? What are things that I can do to get there? I've tried working backward from my end goals to where I am now, but I still feel stuck. Help.
Mark is not ready to date.
Mark wants to date, wants to feel ready, doesn't feel ready, doesn't know what to do to feel ready. And I'm going to throw in, because I know you like multi-questions in one, is there ever a point where you know you're ready?
For some people.
Okay.
There are people that never feel ready to date, never feel ready to get married, almost feel like they're being kicked down the aisle, and they still end up on the other side, but it's part of a personality type. Mm-hmm. So I would ask Mark / look into this situation and say, What's going on? How about when you went to get a job? Did you feel ready to get a job? How about when you were going on vacation? Did you feel ready to take that next trip? Were you looking forward to it? Like, is this within you? Because if this is your norm, then we're just going to work with it. And we're also just going to say, listen, you're never going to feel ready, but you're going to do it anyway. There's a great book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway.
I knew this was coming.
By Susan Jeffers. It's fabulous. Short, quick, easy read. And it talks about these fears and these things that we have. And we're allowed to have fear. And we're allowed to do it anyway and not wait until we're feeling comfortable. Because if we wait for the comfort and the comfort never comes, then what do? It's like we have to just push through. If he's not ready because he doesn't know what his values are, he doesn't know who the type of person he wants to date, he has some trauma from the past that he hasn't overcome. Like if there's something else going on, I would say let's address that first before actually moving on. But if this is just, I don't know, I don't feel ready. When I wake up in the morning, I sometimes don't feel like getting out of bed. Now I get out of bed anyway. I sometimes don't feel like doing anything. I still do something, right? So we can't always just live by our feelings, and our feelings shift and change. Literally, it's sunny outside. I'm happy. Everything's fine. It's rainy outside. No, I'm not going out. I'm done. That's it. Even my dogs react this way. I open the door. They look outside. They see it's pouring out there. And they're like, nope. Nah. That's it. They have the same thing. They don't feel like going outside. And I'm like, you gotta go. Sorry, like figure it out. And it's the thing. So I get it, but feelings aren't, they're just not static, and they're not always based on reality. They're just based on how I feel today, which is based on so many different things. So don't just go by your feelings. Just feel the fear and do it anyway.
And piggybacking off of the last question, if you feel stuck, go see a therapist or a dating coach.
Yeah, absolutely. If you could walk through it and talk through it, you could think through your values. You could think.
I actually wanted you to go into a little bit because I think values and fears, both of those. Can you break down? Can you tell our listeners the two exercises that they should do around values and fears?
Okay, so for Mark and all of our listeners, number one, values. What do you want in a relationship? What is the thing that you are looking for? What are the I want loyalty, I want love, I want commitment, I want dedication, I want somebody who is honest or honorable, whatever the words are, the languages, whatever resonates with you, what are those values? What do you truly want and need in a relationship for that stability and comfort and growth in a relationship long term? And personality types. What type of person works for you and brings out your best side?
But not the physical stuff.
No.
Non-physical qualities.
Non-physical qualities. Looks is a whole nother category, and that's a whole nother podcast.
It's important, but it doesn't need to go on your list because it'll be such a deal breaker that if you're not attracted to the person, it's irrelevant.
Exactly. And then fears are all of those things that you have that like you're not feeling ready to date. Why? Well, there's probably a fear there. Did you have a bad breakup? Did your parents have a big situation? Do you have a sibling who had a terrible dating story or a friend? Or do you have no experience so it just feels so awkward and uncomfortable for you? Like what is going on behind the scenes that prevents you from moving into any relationship? It's not about a specific person. It's just in general. And list out those fears, because when I know my values and I know my fears, I have the ability to go into dating very clear. And then when I look at somebody else, it's like I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh, is that like a reflection of what I'm looking for? No. How do I know that? It's not about my feeling. It's I know it because I have a list, because I'm clear. And people, by the way, people get all up in arms about lists. We're going to have a moment here. Don't get all up in arms about lists, okay? If you're upset about having a list because everybody's like, make your list of your top 3 things. Don't. Please make a list of about a top 10, because you don't really only want 3 things in a person, and you're going to get a range of things, your top 10, and to a degree, right? Like it's not going to be terrible. Most of them should be like in the good range to the great. Somewhere between good and great with your top 10 qualities is really important. After 10, icing on the cake. Because if you're going to feel so satisfied with those top 10, when you have a problem in your relationship, you're going to be like, yeah, but that's my person. I picked them for really good reasons that align with me, we might be having a bad day, or I might not be feeling connected to you, but I know why I picked you, and I know why we're in a relationship.
And what I love about the fears is like once you have them, before you get into a relationship, if I see like, wow, that's really holding me back, I see so clearly where this fear is holding me back from dating, I can then go to a therapist, a dating coach, or myself and know exactly what I need to work on. But then even once I'm in a relationship, I can assess, is this person triggering my own fear? And that's a me issue? Or is it really bad and like this came out of nowhere and it really is a we/them issue? That's not my own thing.
Exactly. And for Mark, it could just be that he doesn't have a lot of experience. He doesn't really know what or how to do. And so the whole process just feels uncomfortable. And it's kind of like that riding a bike. Like you need to like learn how to do it. And then just like when you fall off, like get back on again and just
do it.
Yeah, just do it, like Nike says. Okay, amazing. I've loved this conversation, and I love connecting with all of you. Make sure to send your questions in at Eliza Ben Shalom on Instagram or to our website, marriagemindedmentor.com/podcast. And until next time, remember that matches make families, families make communities, and communities change the world.
When I finish a round of miluim and go back to civilian life, there's almost like a disconnect. It's like after the first few weeks, it feels very weird. You're looking around and you're like, no one knows that